"Your turn next, then," the Dowager Duchess of Dettingham told her eldest granddaughter, with a smug nod at the posy of late china rosebuds the bride had thrown into Persephone Seaborne's hands before driving off with her besotted bridegroom. Suddenly, Persephone wouldn't have been surprised to look down and find it made up of thistles and stinging nettles instead of cosseted late blooms, and almost dropped the lovely thing in the dust. Jessica's purposefully accurate throw showed what a schemer her best friend had become since she had fallen in love with Jack Seaborne, Duke of Dettingham, and she wondered at herself for catching it more by reflex than desire to be the next one to marry as tradition demanded. Wondering who her grandmother expected her to marry this time, she coolly returned the dowager's gimlet-eyed stare and silently fumed about matchmakers of all ages and abilities. "Please don't plague the girl about such things on my daughter's special day, Your Grace," Lady Pendle, mother of the bride, intervened. Her youngest daughter had just married Persephone's cousin Jack, Duke of Dettingham, yet she found time to rescue Persephone from her domineering relative, and she was truly grateful. "Anyway, I think Miss Brittles and Sir John will walk up the aisle long before I do. I see all the classic signs of mutual enchantment," Persephone mused aloud. She marvelled that a couple so very different from Jessica and Jack could wear the same smitten look whenever they set eyes on each other, as the happy couple had been modelling for weeks. Sir John and his ladylove seemed to manage to find their mark remarkably often among the large group of aristocrats and friends invited to the wedding of the year, let alone the season as well. Realising too late she'd placed them in the Duchess's sights by doing her thinking out loud, she sincerely wished she'd held her tongue in the terrible old lady's presence. "Ha! That pair are far too old to go about smelling of April and May in such a ridiculous fashion," the dowager snapped, with a fierce frown in their direction. Miss Brittles took an involuntary step backwards, and Sir John Coulter glowered back with compounded interest. Sensing more interesting prey than her stubborn granddaughter, the dowager forgot her reluctant companions, so Persephone and Lady Pendle cravenly slipped into the crowd of guests, milling about the famous gardens, and made good their escape. "Sir John seems very well equipped to fight his own battles," Lady Pendle muttered sheepishly. "And I'm sure Miss Brittles thinks him even more wonderful than usual for defending her from the Dragon Duchess," Persephone replied. "So it's probably not really chicken-hearted of us to leave her Grace having fun in her own peculiar manner," Lady Pendle agreed, as she led Persephone to where her second youngest daughter was standing with her doting husband, holding their baby son in her arms, and taking in the finer nuances of a happy family occasion with her usual good-humoured intelligence. "Never mind, Persephone dear. Her Grace can't endure the countryside for more than a day or so, and must be pining for the noise and stink of the city by now. Although making her grandchildren squirm is one of her favourite occupations, you do all seem to share a stubborn habit of going your own way. I can't imagine anything more exasperating for the poor dear Duchess than being saddled with such deeply ungrateful descendants as this latest generation of Seaborns. Can you, my love?" Rowena, Lady Tremaine observed wickedly, as she passed his son and heir to Sir Linstock instead of his hovering nurse, who seemed constantly surprised the child's parents were unwilling to leave him to her until he was old enough to be seen and not heard, if that day ever came in the lively Tremaine household, which Persephone doubted. The dashing baronet took his child from his lady with a rueful smile, and a shrug that admitted the wild reputation he'd once worked so hard to earn was ruined, first by his uniquely fascinating wife, and now the robust little son upon whom he clearly doted. There was a look of quiet contentment in his dark eyes Persephone had never thought she would see, and Sir Linstock gently rocked his son, as if he'd been practising to become a loving father for years. He had enjoyed a wild career as one of the worst rakes in London, until he met Rowena's laughing blue eyes one